Okay, so here we are back at the body. There's no problems with this reel, so this will be more of an inspection and a lube on the inside, and even then it should be fine. Be more of an inspection just to make sure there's no potential problems in there. Okay, take off a few of these ancillary pieces, so that just screws off this rubber tension ring. Just pops off fairly simply. Obviously it's got an up and a down side, but that's pretty obvious, right? What we do have here is a fairly typically Shimano hidden piece of equipment, whatever you call it. So you can see a little hole there, and down inside that hole is a rubber stopper. So you need a sharp pin, or in this case a fish hook, and we just lever that rubber stopper out. All very gently, of course, so we don't do any damage, but okay, that comes out and gets put in the little tiny pieces pile. And down in there, down in that hole, way down the bottom, at the back of the reel, is a screw. You can just feel, oh, you can't feel it obviously, because that would be brilliant technology if you could, but you can just feel that sort of, where is it? Yeah, that screwdriver there. Anyway, to take this rear protector off, got another little tiny screw there. Pop that out and put that in the safekeeping pile. Then we go down in there and locate ourselves on that screw down the bottom, and just carefully, because you've got to do these things carefully because this is plastic. And again, I'll show you the bit that breaks on a lot of reels, but you know, break that and you're up for spare parts. So you just work that out carefully. You can see the protector separating from the body of the reel there at the back. And she pops. Now most of the time that little screw down inside there will stay in place, most of the time. Take that off. We'll take that off, and this is the part here that I was talking about. You have to be careful. There it is. Not to break, because when that breaks off, it's up for a new part. And that's all good, that one. Have a look at the back here for, there's that piece that fell off before, remember? So that can come out now. Put that to the safekeeping pile. Checking the back of the reel for corrosion, salt build-up, which there isn't. A tiny little bit there, we'll nick that off. With a cotton bud, actually there is a tiny little bit of corrosion there underneath the paint. I don't know whether we're picking that up. Just there. Can't do anything about it, but it's good to just know that it's there, so that you can stress about it, I suppose. That all looks pretty good under there. Next thing is we'll take this body off and we'll have a look inside. So to get these screws out, these are, what do they call these? Starhead something or others. We've got a T10, and in there, with given Shimano's excellent sense of humour, they put two different size star heads to get the side cover off. So we need a T10 and a T8. That one there's the T8, it's just slightly smaller. That's it for that one, and these ones are the T10s. And one more, so is a T10. It's a shorter screw. Carefully pop that off. There's another one to watch out for, that little, don't even know what that would be called. That just sits there, it goes underneath the tension, the friction ring, goes underneath the friction ring. We'll just very carefully remove that body seal, which doesn't have any lube underneath it, and I so wish they would. There's no protection there either. See, what they think is they just chuck a rubber seal in there and screw it down, it'll be fine. It's not. Water still gets past the rubber seals. So I'll show you that when we reassemble it. What we do about that, and that should just pop straight out. And that's the inside of your Stella. All looks fairly good. There's no lubrication. Well, there is, but we call it factory level lubrication. It's just barely enough, and that's all. So we'll put a little bit extra in there, not too much, mind you. We'll see if I can show you how to locate that bit there when we reassemble it. So that can go there for now. We'll just wind this all the way through its travel, and that's fine. Just look at that going up and down, look for how much play it's got, which is that's about normal. Tiny little bit of wear, but not so much. What you want to look for if you're doing your own reel is this main shaft coming loose by those two screws just there. Okay, if they start to back out, which they can, they shouldn't, but they can. And you can tell just by doing that, see if there's any movement there, and there's not. So actually the level of lube down on that worm shaft is not too bad. I've seen a lot less than that in them, that's for sure. So let's have a look at that bearing down there. That's nice. I wasn't expecting any bearing issues down here because the reel's fairly quiet. So we'll pop a little bit of our white duathlon. I don't even know if I should be saying all these brand names, should I? Ceramic reel gear grease. Tiny little pot, but you don't use much of it. Use it very sparingly. So that's what you do, just put it on with a tiny little, there's a lot of tiny littles in here, but a tiny little paintbrush, and just get it in the groove of that. Worm shaft. That's the word I was looking for, worm shaft. Put a little bit on those runners there. Turn this just to expose some more of that groove. And that's it. We're back around to where we started. A little bit on that main shaft down there. And a tiniest little bit on this idle gear down here. Good. We'll leave that out for now because we'll put a little bit of that on the main gear as well. And now we'll get a drop down on that bearing there. Let that work its way in. Drop at the base of the pinion gear there. And also a drop of this machine or this finer oil. Just on there. And we're pretty happy with that. What I will do while we're here with this is we'll put just the littlest bead of grease around that groove there where the body seal sits, and that will enable the body seal to seal. And we'll also put it on the other side of the other side of the body, just as we go to put it back together. Okay, so that's all around there. And we'll just put some grease on this main gear. And we'll just sort of hold a finger. I like to hold a finger over there, just so that these shims here, these spacing washers, don't go astray. and a tiny, now I've got to stop saying tiny, don't I? Smear, just a bare smear of this grease on the gear faces. That's all it's really designed for, is to go on the faces of the gears, because if you put it anywhere else, it's expensive grease, and you know, you could put it all in here if you wanted to, but then it wouldn't be doing anything except being a barrier. But there's other products for that. So this grease here, just on the gear faces only. And that's all that needs. So we'll go ahead and put that away, and we'll get the other barrier stuff out. We'll have a look at that. Another duathlon product, semi-fluid grease, PTFE, which is, what's PTFE? Teflon. This is basically being, well, they call it semi-fluid grease, but it's just to provide a barrier. You can see that's sort of almost up for a new pot. But again, same as with the other grease, you don't use a lot. So that just provides a film. Okay. So that's a film all in there. Around the edge. And on top. I don't know what though, well I think they call it semi-fluid grease because as you work it, like what I'm doing with the brush, it gets a bit thinner so it spreads, provides a bit of coverage. So that's all that needs. It's just a barrier. Put a little bit of it down in there around that bearing. I'm usually not too concerned with the inside of the body casing like that, and like here. It doesn't hurt to have this stuff on there, but according to reliable sources at Shimano, the inside of these bodies has its own coating and doesn't really need it. But there we go, we'll put it on anyway. Okay, we'll call that a clip. Now, actually what we'll do, the first thing we'll do is we'll reinstall this main gear. I don't know whether I'll be able to capture this on with the camera. Now let me point. There's my pointer. There it is. Okay, see this backup? This is a backup anti-reverse dog. Okay, this is just in case. This is a just in case dog. And that little slot there, where I've got my pointer, is the home for that tiny little wire there. Okay, and that sort of goes in one direction, but when you go the other way it locks it up, so it goes that way easily. Try to go that way and it locks up, and that's what actuates the backup anti-reverse. Okay, that's just in case, you know, one day your main anti-reverse up here might fail. This is just a backup. So what we've got to try and do, a lot of reels have a hole in the main gear just there, so you can line it up through the hole. These ones don't. So what we do is, actually what we do is we get the head torch with a spotlight beam on, and I'm pretty sure the camera won't be able to see what I'm doing in there. But we'll have a go. Okay, so we've got that lined up there. I don't know whether you can see the little thingy bobber lined up with the hole. We just locate it in that hole in its recess there, and that's all we need to do. Goes down, that gear seats, and Bob's your uncle. Does anyone else say that? Bob's your uncle? Do they say that in the United States or anywhere else? Or is that just Australian thing? Okay, so that's the main gear reseated and good to go. Now we'll put a bead of grease on this side plate here so that we can seat that rubber seal. You can see the little notches in the guide there. They'll become obvious what they're for in a minute. So we'll just get a bead of grease all the way around there, and you don't put too much, but if you do put too much, it's not the end of the world, because it will squeeze out anyway when we reassemble. What's more important is to make sure that it's consistent all the way around. So there's grease all the way around, which will provide the seal. There you go. Have I got it all? Have I missed any? I don't think so. So that's good for that for now. We'll reseat the seal. You'll have to be fairly gentle with this rubber, so I'll turn the camera off for now because this is just a bit tedious, a bit boring, but you just need to be nice and gentle reseating it. Okay, so we've got that body seal reseated, and we just pop it back on. You have to be fairly careful with it that you don't disturb the seal, and it sort of snaps into place with a satisfying pop, and good to go. So we'll get these body screws and we'll just put a little drop of the good blue stuff on each one. And we'll slide them back in. We'll start with this smaller one. And the bigger ones. Okay, so tension for these, look, firm, but not too tight, because you've got the Loctite in there, so you want it firm. And that is that for that. We'll just see how much squeeze out we've got. I don't know whether you can see that, but you can see a little bit of squeeze out there from the body seal, a little bit there, and that's good. A little bit around here, a little bit of squeeze out all along here. That's good. That means that the grease that we put on the seal is doing its job. This will get a clean up when we're done. Okay, happy with that, and we'll go ahead and we'll put this rear protector back on. We'll give this underneath of it there a coating of semi-fluid grease. Again, just as a barrier around that screw, just to protect it from salt and water all around that plate there, which secures the worm shaft. You don't want water sort of leaking in through that. That's good. So we'll put back on this piece. I don't even know what that's called. Is that it's just a dressing piece, really, isn't it? It doesn't provide any waterproofing or sealing or anything like that. So you can see that screw up in, I don't know whether you can actually, up in there. We've got to locate that with our screwdriver here. And we'll just look for it to be, there we go, we can see it turning there. That means we've got the screwdriver located. Carefully put that in there. Turn the screw and we should see that close up. Maybe a bit of editing required. There we go. As we pull that in, see that protector coming in till it gets to there, and that's as far as you want to take it, because as I said before, too much pressure there and pop goes another 30 bucks. Put that one back in. And replace our little secret plug. With the blind end down. That one's, one end's got a hole in it, one end's blind. Push that down just until it's level. At this stage, the friction ring can go back. This was the little extra piece, so to speak, that just fits down in there and sits in there like that, and that's simply held in place by this friction ring. Which just sits fairly loosely in its groove right there. So we're just going to go into the anti-reverse clutch and have an inspection. I don't expect to find any issues in there, but we will inspect just to make sure. Carefully lift that seal off. You don't want to damage that sealing edge. And that all looks as expected, really. Clean. A little bit of oil around the edges there, which is, look, it's not a deal breaker, but you don't want to get oil in your roller clutch, in your anti-reverse clutch, because they're designed to work dry, and people put oil in them all the time and they stop working, I promise. So that looks as good as gold. We'll put this back together. These little lugs you can see on that bit there, they go into the recesses above those little springs. This whole time you've got to be really careful with this, because if you happen to drop the reel or bump it or anything, all those springs and rollers come out, and then you've got a mission. Not an impossible mission, but a mission. So if you do happen to take one of these out, you can see it only goes back in one direction. Those two little lugs there are close together, so it'll only go back in one way, but it will go in upside down, which you don't want. Okay, so what I do is take this plastic, there's a plastic spacer on there, take that off, and I just get a scribe and just mark the top of that ring there with anything, an X, a single bar, just so that you know the top of it, what's the top and what's the bottom, so that when it goes back in with that face upwards. Put that back in there, locate those little lugs, just like that. Put this back in, just give it a press. At this stage we'll put this back in as well. This is, without this, the anti-reverse won't work. So we'll put that back in. It only goes in one way. Put this back on, just make sure that there's a seal and a rubber O-ring just there. Make sure that's in place. Screw it down until it makes contact, and then just give it a little bit. Okay. So contact on a little bit. And that's the body done. We'll give the body a bit of a clean while the rotor's off. Just makes it a bit easier, and then we'll reassemble her. Okay, we'll put some more bits back on. that, I should say too, that those threads there I gave just the thinnest coat of grease as well. Now back on with the rotor. Nice. Okay. I do like to put just a single drop down the side of the shaft there. Again, not much, just one drop. And then back on with the rotor nut. So left hand thread again, so left hand to tighten. Now we'll just put this little seal that we discussed before. It's only got one way to go. Well, can go on two ways. It must go on that way. Put that on. Now you have to be fairly careful with these rotor nuts that you don't over tighten them or over loosen them, so they need to be just right. So take it down till it just contacts. Okay, make sure there's no movement in the rotor. And then we get this piece and put it on, see how the holes line up, which is all important. Okay, if you can see just there, the holes are there, they're just not quite lined up, which means we just need to give that nut a little tweak. Can we see that alignment? Let me put a little bit of extra light on there. Okay. So just not quite lined up, which is okay, that's fine. We just give that nut the slightest tweak. And like magic, the holes are aligned. Oh, there we go. No disturbance in the force now. So now we can put these screws back in. Again, not too tight, not too loose. These are not load bearing, so all they do is hold this. Seems good. Now the final pieces, the spool support. Back on with those adjusting shims there as they came off. superb nice drags. Shimano do nice drag systems. That's good. Wind the handle on. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is the smoothness that you pay, what, $1,800 for now? That's why you pay it. Good. Good. We're done on this one. And go and do the other ones now. Okay, thanks for watching. Like and subscribe, please. All that sort of stuff. Cheerio.